Welcome to episode 25 of the XrmToolCast. This is part 2 of a 2-part episode with Scott Durow, where we talk about frameworks. In this episode, we finish our talk, and then the conversation gets seriously derailed, and we can start talking about faxes, dial-up modems, and how not to end a podcast. So, if you're interested in seeing ways in which we can just have fun and enjoy talking, stick around for the end. Highly recommend it. With that, let's get started. Scott, you mentioned something that I struggled with when I first started doing consulting work, and that was dealing with being at a partner and knowing that you're going to be doing the same thing 10 times this year, or that year, or that month, whatever it happens to be, and saying to yourself and to the client of, hey, we need to create something that we can reuse, because why would you want me writing this from scratch every single time, right? Mm-hmm. And then very quickly I realized, well, crap, if I write this from scratch and I store it in as a client, as not client intellectual property, but as the actual partner intellectual property, then, and it's not open source, then they are completely tied to the hip to me and my company, or whatever that happens to be at that point in time, and whether or not we choose to upgrade or maintain that. So I think that's a very important distinction to be very, very careful, and I would say almost never trust something that is not open source, that is not the actual platform itself when it comes to that, because now you're tied into one particular partner where, hey, if something in the platform changes and you need to change the actual framework that you're using, you don't have access to that. So that was something that I realized very quickly. I need to open source whatever I'm working on now, so that way I can reuse it at the next gig. And if the previous gig finds a bug, that's all the merrier. Now I don't have to spend time testing and figuring that out and carrying that forward. So yeah.
Absolutely. That is it in a nutshell. Because it all comes down to IPR and who's going to pay for the development. Because if you're on the clock for a particular customer and you're developing something that's going to be open source, then you have to have that decision. You have to have that discussion up front to say, yeah, well, actually, other people will be able to benefit from the stuff that we're writing for your project, and if they're uncomfortable with that, then that's a different decision. Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. There's been quite a lot of a debate in the press recently around Eclipse versus VS Code, and because VS Code is open source.
What kind of press are you reading?
Is Eclipse
that's not in my press. Okay, sorry. Go ahead. Eclipse, VS Code, continue.
Yeah. So Eclipse, is the open source it's been around for donkey's years. What is a donkey's
years?
I knew you were going to pick up on that, Daryl. It's like, what is a donkey? It's like, is it a dog year? There's how many years is a dog year in real terms?
It's like 7 or 9, somewhere around there.
Yeah. So what is a donkey's years? So donkey's years. I'm just googling it as we speak.
We're live googling on the show.
Yeah, rhyming slang replacing years with ears. Well, donkey's years reverts to years. Donkey's ears implies a long time because donkey's ears are long. That is the worst. That is the.
So you're thinking about rabbit years.
Wow.
That literally
Scott.
has to be the worst phrase ever.
That's it. You're not coming back on.
So Eclipse has been on since the year. Well, okay, something.
I stand by it. Donkeys years.
Donkey years.
I've completely forgotten what I was talking about. Oh yeah, Eclipse. So yeah, it's an open source development IDE. It was used for Java, creating Java, and then it branched out into other languages. And then obviously VS Code comes along, and which is an open source IDE. But although it's open source, Microsoft effectively are the main contributor. And then they do own a little bit of the IPR. There's a few things like what's that feature in Visual Studio that allows you to co-author code? It's like
live share.
Live share. That's it. Live share. So live share is in Visual Studio, but it's also in VS Code. So obviously they own that, and I think there's kind of iconography and stuff that they've got branding rights over and things. But on the whole, it's open source. So for example, if you said, okay, well, we're a massive global organization with a massive development team, we're going to adopt VS Code as our primary development environment, then you could argue that if Microsoft lost interest in VS Code, you can still carry on because it could become a community project. However, Microsoft are investing huge sums of money in VS Code. So I think that's what I think is the difficult conversation, when people actually invest time and money in developing software when actually they don't see the benefit of other people using it. Because I think the reason they generally don't see that benefit is because they've not actually lived a scenario in real terms where actually someone else has found and fixed a bug in some code that you open sourced, and then you get to benefit from that. And I think that's the discussion that you have to have when someone says, well, I'm not going to pay for you spending X number of days writing something that's going to open source. Well, I want it to be, we want to keep it and we want it to be ours. But actually then you have to have that conversation and say, well, if you get a community around it, then you're going to benefit from that.
Well, most of the time you aren't starting to write the open source project on the project anyway. It's already been started previously. And so now you add a feature that they need or something else like that.
Yeah. Or you might start. I mean, it has to start somewhere, right? And I think a lot of these libraries that are very popular did start with particular one project.
I know I created at least one external toolbox tool that I didn't need myself, but someone else asked me for it, and the development gets a lot harder then, because you don't sort of feel and live the use case, but you do it from an order, basically.
Mm-hmm. Okay, we spent a lot of time going into theoretical here, Jonas.
Yeah.
Did we answer your questions? Because if so, there's something I'd like to kind of go through, like a lightning round, huh?
Okay, yeah, you answered a lot, but there's one angle that Scott brushed on here, which is the question, what are you trying to solve? And so I've been trying to list the things you want to solve by having some sort of supporting framework. And the one obvious thing is duplicated code. You don't want to do the initialization of the tracing service and the organization service and stuff every time you write a plugin. So duplication of code. You might want type safety. So you'll need some early bound stuff on top of it. And also for like this, there's an interesting thread on GitHub on the repository for the CDS for core, .NET Core libraries. And it, amongst other things, mention what are the 10, 20, and 40 magic numbers. Well, it's the plugin stages we of course know, but well, we shouldn't need to know that. So, and I don't think early bound solves that either, but some sort of typing of these things instead of having magic numbers and magic strings.
Third, like for example, I mean, you knew I was going to bring it up, but SPKL, the plugin metadata. I mean, that's because that's what it does. Is when you install that NuGet package, it brings down your class. It codes. It's not a binary. It's just a code file that introduces a attribute that you can mark up your plugin code, and it has got enum for the managing the plugin stages. So yeah, I think those kind of things are great to solve.
Okay, so next thing I want to solve is help with tests. Unit tests and preferably also some sort of integration test or whatever you might call it when you're actually working with mocking data and so on, and communication with CRM. And then finally the deployment story, which will include like you mentioned the old developer toolkit thing where you define in code what the steps should look like and so on. And I guess Sparkle does that as well. So do you think these four sort of pillars or different areas of what problem we're trying to solve, would that cover it according to you?
I mean, those all sound very good areas to sort of augment. I probably dare say would go down smaller into each of those areas and sort of try, rather than saying, okay, well, we're going to have one thing that does everything in the testing area, for example, because I think there's so many different testing frameworks out there. There's so many different approaches to mocking. So I think we've got this. That's what's great about the open source community. There is a lot of diversity there, and it's not like you can go and you have to, if you pick this one thing, then you have to do exactly the same for all the other areas. And I think that's one of the challenges with monolithic frameworks is that if you pick that particular framework, then it's forcing you down. It's very opinionated in all of the areas. So that's really why I try to look for things. So in my own development of open source software is to say, okay, how can I be the least opinionated, but solve a particular problem in that particular domain. So I mean, I'm working on for PCF. It's React. It's specifically for React PCF components. And it's specifically solving the problem in a fairly unopinionated way of how to manage all the events that you get out of the PCF framework, both from a canvas and from a model-driven deployment. So again, and that's what I love about something like NPN is that you can create that one little thing that does that thing, and you can include it alongside a whole ton of stuff. But as soon as I say, well, if you're going to use that, then you have to do this in your unit testing, then that becomes a problem for me because it forces you down an opinion outside of the problem domain.
Yeah, I think that's a good definition. It should solve the problem at hand and not force you into other directions.
Yeah.
In other areas of your development.
Yeah.
So when you are on a new project, you're starting to write your first plugin. What do you do? Do you implement the iPlugin interface, or what do you do?
I have generally
a framework.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've used many different base classes over the years, and I have a base class that I use which is fairly close to the old school base class that used to come with a Visual Studio template. It does it. I mean, it does what it does very well, which is effectively about factoring out a single type that can contain the organization service, the tracing service that can be passed
container or something.
Yeah, like a context. Like I think it's called like local context or something, isn't it? And you pass it around your methods, and you don't have to worry about having leakage and having member fields and having state that's going to be reused across cached instances and all that kind of stuff. It works really well. So I don't see any need from a plugin perspective. I don't see any need to do anything more than that in terms of reusable. I mean, I've seen frameworks that do kind of similar to the old school plugin based class that used to have the kind of the ability to register messages, like, and that's a classic in a framework scenario.
Yeah.
For me, that was never solving a problem that I actually had, because it was like I never had a situation where I thought, oh, actually I've got a whole ton of code here that I wish I didn't need to write, because actually it's like, well, this event happens, what do I want to have happen? And you can do that through registering a particular plugin on a particular event.
So the four areas you said, so the plugin base, type safety, testing and deployment. So Jonas, when you start on a project, do you have go-tos that you go to?
I don't. I call you guys and we record a podcast.
Oh, okay. All right. So you haven't started a project in a long time because you haven't started. This is the first.
That's actually true. I haven't started. I've come onto projects several times and sort of still being on the PowerPoint stage of projects. But so this is really the first time I'm in the sort of startup phase of a project.
I love those types. I love those parts of the project. When you're really in that kind of creative, and you sort of, the sky's the limit before you
greenfield development. Yep.
Yeah, it's love it. And then of course, then you've got you get all these amazing, crazy, wacky ideas, and you're whiteboarding it. Have you ever been in one of those rooms which every single wall is a whiteboard?
Yeah.
And someone closed the door, and you think, I'm never getting out of here. But yeah, I mean, it's fantastic. And then obviously you can start to sort of apply. Well, okay, maybe that's not practical. Maybe that's a phase 2, all those kind of things. But yeah, I love that Imagineering. Oh, that's a horrible word. Why did I even say
All I
that?
feel is a really heavy wheel that I'm carrying around.
Yes. Nice tie back.
I've-
So, Scott, I want to ask you the same question then. So Jonas has nothing that he does apparently. What do you do? Do you have a go-to? I'm assuming that you just use the Sparkle for handling your deployment situations and that kind of stuff, right?
Yep, absolutely. I mean, I am a very PowerShell orientated for CI/CD. I don't tend to, because obviously in things like with Azure DevOps, you've got the different tasks, and obviously we've got the Power Apps tasks that do reasonably good job of doing various different CI/CD, and we obviously got Whales tasks as well. And I mean, actually, underneath those, it's just PowerShell. That's what it's doing. So I think this really comes back to my preference for having code reuse rather than binary reuse. Because I think when you include a task in Azure DevOps, what you've got there is you've got something that you can never change. Whereas if you've got something that's a PowerShell, then I can tweak that, and I can then I can make it do something a little bit different, because
it's much more configurable if you want it to be or whatever, versus it's a button. You get to choose the button. There may be a couple things to configure, but that's it. You're stuck with whatever that is what you're saying.
Yeah, and I think if it does what you need to do, then great. But I think it's specifically in the area of DevOps and CI/CD, I find there are always lots and lots of unique scenarios that you have to handle, that quite often need to be PowerShelled, and so therefore I'm like, well, if I'm going to do all this PowerShell, then and actually it's very easy to call the build tasks and the deployment tasks using PowerShell, because there's fantastic PowerShell gallery tasks already, and in fact that's what's being used by those Azure DevOps tools. So those Azure DevOps tasks are just like a UI, if you like, on top of some sort of orchestration of PowerShell. So it's already
an abstraction.
Yeah, exactly, and it's just easy to do it. So I'm like, well, I've got all this PowerShell anyway, so why not? And then the great thing about that is I can run it locally. I can test it locally. I can just open up a PowerShell console and just run my PowerShell. Oh yeah, it's great. It works. Or this, I can debug it and say, well, that particular task doesn't work for these reasons.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Yeah, I think you may have just inspired me, since I'm between projects, to go do a Pluralsight core on PowerShell, because I've been needing to learn it for like a decade now, and I just never got around to learning it. So maybe I should go do that
you'll
now.
pick it up I mean, honestly, it really is.
Yeah.
It's, for someone of your caliber, Daryl.
It's like a mix of DOS and C# or something like that.
Yeah. I mean, it's a bit weird. Like, in a sense, I always liken it to starting. If you were starting to learn regex expressions, you're like, wait, what? But then once you've done it a few times, you're like, oh yeah, actually, this is really cool.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So neither of you have go-to frameworks for the other three portions of it, for the testing, for the type safety, and for the plug-in base code.
I sense where this is going.
So testing. I mean, I have my go-to framework for plugin testing, which is uses XRM. It's the Sparkle Fake It Easy.
XRM Easy.
Not XRM Easy, no, Fake It Easy, which is like
Take It Easy, okay.
Yeah, which is it's just an open source project that creates fakes. Really, really simple. I have a very sort of I always try with my tests to try and keep the test being very specific to a particular outcome. And I think Fake It Easy is great because you can say, well, actually, I'm only going to mock the stuff that I need to mock, and that's ultimately what will pass or fail. As soon as my code starts to try and do something outside of that mock, I want to know about it. So that's my, and the same for my approach with TypeScript testing. So I use Jest from all of my TypeScript testing.
Yep.
And Jest is great because it just allows you to mock stuff really simple, and then you can create expectations on those mocks. You can create mock implementations really easy. So the test, the actual creation of the test is very explicit. So you get to know about changes. It's very, and in fact, I kind of like tests that are fragile, because if they're fragile, it means, because if it's fragile, it means that if something has changed, you've done something to your code, I want to know that I've changed some behavior of the stuff that I'm testing.
Well, that's different, though. I mean, when I think of fragile, I think of if I change a method signature, now my code breaks, or the test breaks, or that type of stuff. Or if I change how I'm actually implementing whatever the interface is, then that breaks my code because it's too dependent on what exactly it is that it's testing. You know what I mean? Like, that's what I think of more so when I think of fragile testing, but fragile test. But you're saying more of I think you're saying more of just being a test that's very specific rather than fragile.
Okay, let's say that your plugin has to update like a child record once you've made a change to something in the pipeline. If you make then a change that then creates a whole ton of, maybe you introduced a bug which actually meant that it iterates over 20 records when it actually should have only updated one. I want my expectations in my unit test to specifically say I expect there only to be one update, one call to update. Yeah. And so if my plugin starts doing 10 updates, I want to know that test fails. So that's what I mean by fragile. I mean, in the sense that the expectations are very, very specific, rather than, I think sometimes it's tempting to create tests which are easy to create, but actually are very forgiving in terms of the expectations that you're testing against.
Cool. All right. That makes sense. Cool.
But I think it comes down to opinions, and which is why I was saying.
Like butts. We all have one.
Yeah, absolutely. And in a lot of these things, I think it's very easy to get into a situation where you kind of say, well, that's how I do it, therefore I think everyone else should do that. And I think that's where frameworks start to border into the sort of dangerous water, is when they become so opinionated that they really do start to restrict you going forwards. I mean, obviously, sometimes there's nothing. It's unavoidable of being opinionated, but as long as the opinions are specifically around where you're trying to solve the problems. I mean, for example, like React is incredibly opinionated in terms of how you build components, because that's what it does. That's the whole purpose. It is not opinionated at all in how you build those components. They can be functions, they can be classes, they can, they can be using hooks. There's so many different ways of achieving. And in fact, as a framework, it goes really over the top sometimes in an attempt to be unopinionated about that. It's like, well, if you want to do that, that's fine. If you want to do that, that's fine. We're just going to give you a framework that allows you to respond to hooks onto state and props changing, so that we can re-render things and understand the hierarchy of components, so that we don't render stuff when we don't want to. And so I think that's why opinions. I use opinions so much, is because we want to make sure we're having opinions where it's beneficial, rather than opinions just because it's something that we think everyone else should do.
Makes sense. Well, Jonas, I think you've gotten your questions answered, right?
Yes, I'm now able to ask a lot more questions, actually.
So it's not having your questions answered for the project. It's being able to know what questions to ask when you get back in that meeting. Then. So
I've got a question for you guys. What do you think about the direct query then, the SQL querying on CDS?
So, if maybe you should explain what we heard today a few hours ago on the MBS.
When are you going to put this out? I mean, it might be old news, and it's going to take you a month.
Probably.
Everyone will be like, what are they talking about? We've been using this for.
Shoot. Also, the direct query, from what I understand, you can now. Is it just related to Power BI? Because they use direct query to. No. obviously, as you hear. Please, Scott, explain. What did we hear?
Well, I mean, so what we were seeing there was the ability to open up a connection to CDS in SQL Server Management Studio, which is a pretty big deal.
So you can actually use SQL to query CDS?
Yes, yeah, exactly. You're right. T-SQL queries. Now, I mean, obviously, we're not connecting to the SQL Server database, because obviously that's never going to happen. Some people might say, please, can we do that? But I would like, no, why would we ever want to do that, given it's a cloud? But
so we get something that converts from SQL select statements to fetch XML
yeah.
to the CDS.
That'd be so funny.
Yeah.
If it's going via fetch, it would be so funny if that was happening behind the scenes, but I don't know. But yeah, I mean, the thing is that what that opens up is the opportunity to use the direct query in Power BI. That's why it was in the MBES announcements, it was positioned around Power BI, because one of the challenges with Power BI and CDS is that you have to do this whole refresh thing, and it's all a bit annoying, whereas direct query is great when you're connecting to a SQL database, because you can get this, and it does a little bit of clever caching and all that kind of stuff, but you can get up-to-date data. So I think it's so exciting, I think, for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Opens up a lot of doors. And so, do you know if you had only read access that way, or could you also use like SQL update statements and so on?
It only looks like the select, the querying stuff at the moment, but who knows?
So it's fetch XML.
So the slide that I'm seeing says SQL Management Studio works. Then they say nothing about I think this is from Charles Lamanna's presentation. It doesn't say anything about whether updates or not work. It says Entity Framework works. So I'm thinking that means that updates would work then, right?
Unless you're just using Entity Framework for querying, right? So
just for querying, I guess, maybe. But that may also mean that I finally have a link to CRM or link to CDS that's like legit, that like works and doesn't have all this really, really weird edge cases that you don't know about and that breaks all the time. And if that's the case, then I may be using that going forward.
I think so. I think that's what they're trying to do, is that create this. This bridge so that CDS understands SQL queries. We can just use whatever it is.
All right, I'll continue here. AAD auth means all security works, e.g. RLS trimming. What's RLS trimming? Role level security.
Yeah, right. So that exactly. Role level security. Yeah. So I guess if you query it, you're going to only get the records that you have access to.
Yep. And then the full stack runs plugins and plug-in business rules, all that kind of fun stuff. Everything runs.
Yeah. Do you remember the old views on premise?
Yes.
Do you remember those views that used to do the kind of horrendous join to the principal object access table? Them weren't the days.
That's when you would kill the 256 join limit in SQL.
Yeah, exactly. And it would just.
So if it's still only for read, then that means the SQL for CDS tool in External Toolbox still has a place, because he has translated updates and deletes and inserts as well.
Yeah.
Fetch XML Builder, though, is likely going down the drain. So,
I don't think ever so.
Thanks for having me on the show.
Fetch XML, Jonas, Fetch XML is just literally never going away. I mean, it's like, goodness me, it's so much part of the framework, isn't it? It's so. Do you remember? I mean, because they did talk about it in CRM4, was it deprecating it? I think that was CRM4 days. I think they had made an announcement of deprecating, and then they were like, "No, actually, there's no way we get it."
Right.
Well, Scott, you've spent an hour with us. We appreciate it. You're always welcome to come back. I could always use somebody that has an even better accent than Jonas does, or I guess myself. I don't know, but you've got that classic accent that just it just sounds so smart, all the time.
That's my secret. It's just my accent. That's all it is.
It's not you're smart, so that's
exactly.
why I have a good accent.
Yes. Yeah. It's got me this far in life, which has been.
I was joking with Sarah Critchley that if I ever go to England and do a presentation there, I'll try to do the presentation with an English, British accent the whole time. See how far I can get through it. Because if I'm around it, I can pick it up pretty good. But I have to go from scratch.
It reminds me of that Friends episode when Ross starts doing his lectures in an English accent. It's like a kind of Cockney Dick Van Dyke kind of Mary Poppins. all right, governor.
We should do that episode as well.
Yes. We'll do a Mary Poppins episode.
Very good. I like it.
The XrmToolCast. Crikey.
Oh, I love it.
Oh, that'd be.
It sounds like it's time to sort of
round
off.
If we start talking about Mary Poppins, I think we've gone off schedule here. We need to.
Let's go back to Weezer.
All right, we're back to Weezer.
This is where you cue Weezer. This is where that's your and now.
You'll bring your car to work. I'll bring my board. And when you're out of fuel, I'll still be afloat. Anyway, Weezer song. So,
very good.
Scott, how can our listeners? I guess we've mentioned the Sparkle framework a little bit here, but there might be other things you want to share as well. How can the listeners get a hold of you and see what you're into, see what you're doing?
Hey, just go to GitHub, search for Scott Durow, and all my stuff's in GitHub. Got some cool projects in the sort of pipeline, all TypeScript PCF based. So, I'll see you there.
Oh, awesome!
I'll see you on GitHub. That's a nerdy thing to say.
Yeah, I'll take that.
What do you expect? What do you expect?
Sorry. That's why we brought him.
Yeah, Scott also has the most amazing PR he's ever had in years. That's sitting in the Sparkle framework, actually. So, the pull request.
Oh yes. Thank you very much for that, Daryl. Yeah, that was very much appreciated. Yeah.
Yeah. So, news, I guess, is that hopefully, as long as everything's good and I haven't broken anything, and Scott's happy with what I did, the early bound generator will be able to be ran directly with Sparkle if you want to use some of the features that provides over what just the Sparkle framework provides. So, anyway, that has been added to that. So, I have yet to document it because I'm not sure if Scott's going to approve what I've done. But once he's done, I'll be happy to add some documentation about how to do that as the story of my life goes. And I need another me that loves documentation. That's what I need.
Yeah, well, you know what my comment on the pull request will be. Now, can we have the README updated?
Well, I was looking at that and I couldn't find it. But anyway, all right. So yes, so that's
awesome.
that. So find Scott on GitHub. He's got plenty of stuff out there and some new stuff coming on the pipe, so that'd be great. Jonas, how can our listeners, how could our listeners find out more about us or get in contact with us?
They could by email, the old style of communication, cast at XrmToolbox.com, or on Twitter at XrmToolCast, or on LinkedIn. Actually, we're there as well. Just look for XrmToolCast. You'll find us there to get updates of new episodes and other stuff.
And fax us your episode request at 555. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah. You Americans always forget the country number first.
That's because we don't care. We're prima donnas. We invented the frickin' telephone. We get to do what we want to with it.
Yeah. This is the cue. Should we just mute ourselves and say, okay, bye?
That's it. All right. Thank you, everyone, for listening. We appreciate it. Thanks again to Scott for coming.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Everyone remember to be smart with the frameworks they're using, I guess. So.
Yeah, it's and this is where we just make that sound of the line going dead. Or maybe a fax machine. Maybe we could put a fax machine in there.
Or that modem dialing up.
I can't wait to hear how you've edited it in.
This may all be in there. I'm not sure. Or maybe a special episode where we talk about how not to end a podcast. Maybe that's what that is.
Yeah.
It
could be a 2-minute two-state tip.
2 minutes.
How not to end the podcast.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I've really enjoyed my evening chatting to you guys. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Scott. See ya. Bye. this has been the XrmToolCast with Jonas Rapp and Daryl Labar. If you have any questions for Jonas or I, or suggestions for future episodes, please send them to cast@xrmtoolbox.com or tweet to XrmToolCast.